Hi, do you want to spice up your group model building? You can do so using systems thinking games, which I have not developed, but other people have. I'm just using them. Uh, I'll come back to the sources later on. Um, for example, I've used Arms Crossed, which is a game that is about change being difficult and learning something new. Circles in the Air, which is about a change of perspective. Avalanche, which is a game that is about counterintuitiveness of systems that is being experienced by a group of people who are turned into a system. The same is for triangles. It also turns people into a system, but it lets them experience interconnectedness and leverage points instead. Why have I been using these games? Well, different purposes. For example, imagine that you're doing group model building with a group for the first time. They might be emotionally unprepared, not really open for something completely different. They might be with their heads and hearts still in what they've experienced before the workshop. You can use a game as, for example, Avalanche, um, to make people get emotionally engaged and actually experience something and make them appreciate or being interested in the methods that are being used in the scripts to come afterwards. And yeah, another problem that you might run into in group model building sessions is that sometimes you have too long of an introduction or another phase that is kind of lengthy and passive for people, which is not nice. You should try to avoid it, of course, but sometimes you can't due to institutional rules and so forth. And the same holds for lunch breaks, right? Afterwards, people tend to be tired or get tired at least. And what can you do? You can do a little game to activate people again. And that game gives you the additional chance of getting some systems insight across that you then come back to when you encounter them in your group model building. So that's sort of a win-win there. Group model building, I believe, and these are my hypotheses, I've been digging a little bit as to maybe why these things work, why they're interesting for participants. Well, in these games, people experience phenomena rather than just talking about them in an abstract manner. They also talk about them and experience them using analogies. And analogies have been proven helpful in learning or understanding. They interact with physical objects, or they interact with other people. There's an element of gamification involved. There are positive emotions like fun, excitement, surprise. There's an interaction other than verbal communication going on between the participants. And while Scriptopedia and the scripts that have been developed and are laid down in there is wonderful, I believe there's room for the points that I've sketched above. My conclusions, well, I believe that systems thinking games are valuable for group model building. I've experienced this myself, and it's also plausible as I've outlined, but, and that's a limitation, this still awaits rigorous scientific evaluation, right? These are just hypotheses for the time being. You could, for example, do research using questionnaires, or you could video record group model building sessions where this doesn't harm the purpose, of course. And then you could transcribe not just spoken text, but facial expressions, body language, and so forth to see what it does to people. You could also do controlled experiments by having several group model building sessions, and some of them being with and some of them being without systems thinking games, and being on exactly the same subject. That should give you a clue as to what the games do or don't. Some points from my side on the discussion. Should systems thinking games be incorporated into Scriptopedia? Open question. Then, if you're interested in using these for your group model building, then an exchange between us, you and me, and all of us might be interesting with respect to other sources of systems thinking games besides just the two aforementioned books. Which systems thinking games should be used for which aims in group model building, and also which applications of systems thinking games besides group model building but involving system dynamics are conceivable. For example, I've been using it for the World Climate Game, which has been developed by Climate Interactive, and it contains both an element of management flight simulation using a simulation model and also social simulation, so a role-playing game. I'd also be interested in exchanging on how to, or I'd be interested in thinking about how to best facilitate such an exchange. Here again, the two books and a link to Scriptopedia with a bit more detail. I don't want to be advertising this, but the second one you can get as an ebook. The first one just as paper, and it might be sold out, but it does have the advantage that it comes with a DVD, so you may also want to think about getting it from your library with DVD, because it will help you get started. Thank you for your interest. Hope to see you at the table talk.